Chapter 5. A Gardener, a Pharmacist, and a Factory Prince. Most of the details of events of Ruth's childhood are lost to us, but when she talked about her years in the children's home, there were 3 events in particular that she recalled quite clearly. The first because of the danger, the second because of her shame, and the third because it was a day that made her feel special. Old Shriven liked to see the little children coming into his orchard every summer to help him harvest his currants, gooseberries and raspberries. The Goldene Pforte Children's Home had an endless supply of willing kids. It was free labour, but he knew that they ate almost as much as they picked. He could charge good prices at the market, but there was only so much he could sell before the fruit went bad. The trouble was, it all ripened at the same time. He thought of himself as a generous man, a charitable man. When they brought their brimming baskets back to his shed, their little faces were stained red with juice from the ripe fruits. "Have you eaten any of my fruit today?" he asked them, his face stern. No, we didn't eat any, Herr Shriven." Their high voices rang out as their eyes slid away from his. "That's all right, then," he laughed as he sent them on their way with the baskets of berries for the pastor. As summer turned to autumn, the apples, pears and plums hung heavy on his trees, and the orchard smelled of ripe and rotting fruit. It was time for the harvest. Only the older boys were allowed to come to help him then, scrambling up ladders, sitting confidently astride the branches, just as he had been able to do in his youth. It was the little girls he preferred, though, the tender little ones, in their light summer dresses with their bare feet and legs. They never came to him when the apples turned red. Shriven walked along Junghansstrasse towards his orchard, watching the children laughing and chattering on their way home from the Volksschule. There was one little girl walking alone just ahead of him. She was humming to herself. He thought he recognized her. She was from the children's home, he was sure of it, a pretty, dark-haired little thing. He remembered how she'd gorged herself on ripe raspberries when she came to pick berries 3 months ago. He caught up with her. "Hello, what's your name?" he asked her. "Don't you live at the Goldene Pforte?" She looked up shyly. "Yes, I'm Ruth Schmidt." "Do you know who I am, Ruth Schmidt?" "Yes, you are Herr Shriven, the gardener. You grow all the lovely fruit. We come to help you pick the berries." "That's right. Do you like picking my fruit?" "Oh, yes." She hummed to herself as she skipped along beside him, her satchel bumping against her side. As they neared the gate to his orchard, he stopped. "I've just had an idea," he said, as if the thought had only just occurred to him. "I have a tree full of ripe paradise apples. Would you like some?" Her eyes widened. He could see the hunger in them, the same hunger he saw in the eyes of all those orphaned children. "Oh, yes, please." "Then we'd better go down to my office together and fetch a bucket to put them in." Ruth followed him eagerly through the orchard, where the branches of trees hung heavy with flushed fruit, down the long path, past the rank odour of the compost heap, to his garden shed. So we went a long, long way down to where his office was, which was in an isolated spot, and when we were in, he locked the door. If I would have screamed, nobody would have heard. He could have done me in. I found it a bit nerve-wracking. I don't know how old I was, perhaps 8. He'd put me on his lap, and his hand was on my knee, and it slipped a little bit higher and higher until it reached a certain point. I almost couldn't breathe. I was sitting there, frightened, very still. I thought he would touch me. I didn't know that something else could happen as well. I didn't know about it. I thought, I felt, to be touched there was very wrong. After a little while, he asked me, "What are you thinking about?" And I said, "Jesus. I'm thinking of Jesus." And that must have stopped him. He must have had a conscience suddenly, this poor little child, thinking of Jesus in case something happened to her. He didn't give me any paradise apples, but he gave me 2 marks. It was a lot of money, so I went shopping and bought a huge bag of sweets, golden humbugs. And then for Hans, I bought a pencil sharpener, a ruler and compass. And I still had change. So I got peanuts, a huge bag of peanuts. I went to the children's home and I said to Hans, "Let's go to the park." And I gave him his stuff, and then we all ate the peanuts, the whole lot, and all the shells went down on the floor next to the bench on the little hill. The park keeper came. We were always frightened of the parkman, and we had to pick it all up. The excitement, when you've got all this money and you have to keep it quiet. I don't think anyone ever noticed. Nobody said, "Where did you get that money from?" Old Shriven liked to see the children coming into his orchard every summer to help him harvest his currants, gooseberries and raspberries, the tender little girls in their light summer dresses with their feet and legs bare. Old Shriven thought he'd better get up early and go to church next Sunday. Little Ruth Schmidt had quite unnerved him. The next occasion is an episode of which Ruth was very ashamed. But all children do naughty things sometimes. As an adult, she knew that this was very bad, although she had no concept of the magnitude of her crime at the time when she did it. She told me the story looking back as an adult, but I will try to get into the mind of that little girl. There's a girl at school called Liesel who sometimes shares her sandwiches with me. Lovely thick Leberwurst mit Gherkin. Yesterday she invited me to go home with her. She lives above her father's chemist shop in Grune. First we went upstairs and her mother gave us warm creamy milk and Streuselkuchen. Then Liesel took me downstairs to show me her father's shop. I'd never seen anything like it before. The wooden shelves were full of bottles with strange-coloured liquids and jars of pills of every shape and colour. And there was a dark chest with lots of little drawers, all labelled with words I couldn't understand. Whilst her father was serving an old man, Liesel and I went into the storeroom at the back. She showed me where her father kept everything. There were more shelves with even more bottles, and piles of cardboard boxes with the word "From" printed on the side. Liesel opened one and took out an ugly, long, rubbery thing. "Do you know what this is?" she asked me in a whisper. She kept looking at the door as if expecting her father to appear at any moment. "No," I whispered back, realizing that she didn't want her father to hear her. "It's called a preservative," condom. "A man puts it on his thing so he doesn't make babies." I felt that she knew a lot more about making babies than I did. "How does a rubber thing like that work? How can that stop babies being born?" She stared at me in disbelief and explained how it all worked. I could hardly believe it. It sounded so awful to me. How could a woman let a man do that to her? Liesel saw the look of disgust on my face and giggled. "Here," she said, pulling a couple of pins from her hair and handing me one. "Let's make babies." She took one of the rubbery things with the strange name and pricked a hole in it. Then she gave me one. It felt funny in my hand, a bit floppy, not very nice. "Go on, you can do it. Just think, some new bitter babies will be born just because of us." We pricked holes in nearly all of the things in the box, giggling all the time, until we heard her father say goodbye to his customer and the doorbell ringing as the customer left the shop. Liesel quickly shut the box and put it back neatly on top of the pile. Trying to hide our giggles, we went back upstairs. I wonder how many babies we made yesterday. It was not the best way for Ruth to learn about the facts of life and about birth control. How many couples had unwanted pregnancies due to the silly game of those two little girls? One golden day stood out in Ruth's memory as a day filled with happiness, even though she was only too aware at the time of the lamentable contrast between the warmth and luxury of family life of the children she visited and her own institutional life in the children's home. She told me this story so many times that I can easily imagine her feelings. He is the eldest of the Corrier children. They are all three at high school. He's nearly a young man, I suppose. It's the second time I've come to their house, which is just a short walk from the children's home. Frau Corrier sometimes invites children from the Golden Gate, so that her own children, who have everything a child could want, can get to know about poor children like me, who have nothing. I like coming here a lot. I'm always happy when it's my turn to come. The house is so beautiful, warm and bright and full of laughter. His two sisters share their toys and books with me. They have so many lovely things. I love their beautiful dolls, and they have a tin monkey painted with a red hat and trousers. When it's tipped up, it climbs along a rope. How Hans would love that monkey. I feel a bit shy with her brother. He is tall and has hair that looks as if it has been kissed by the moon, pale blonde, and his eyes are the bluest blue you can ever imagine. Although I know that Herr Corrier, his father, owns a big factory in another part of Dresden, I think he really must be a prince. He is so handsome, and his parents are so rich. I know I'm only 11, but I think he might want to marry me one day when we're grown up. I think he likes me. I hope he waits for me. His sister showed me round their garden. I came here once before, but then it was winter. Now the garden stretches into the distance, a long bright green carpet framed by brilliant beds overflowing with summer flowers, and behind them huge trees full of birds singing. Under wooden frames, heavy with pink roses, stand half-hidden garden seats. We sit together on one of them, breathing in the heady mixture of sweet roses, honeysuckle, and jasmine that perfumes the air. The sisters pick daisies from the lawn, and we weave them into necklaces. They make me a coronet of daisies, exclaiming at how bright the white flowers look against my black hair. They really show up like jewels, said the younger one, adjusting my crown. They never notice against our fair hair. You must keep it on, says the older sister. Show our brother how lovely you look. I feel proud and shy at the same time. He's running towards us, long bare-legged strides down the stretch of the lawn. I'm too shy to look at him directly, but glance sideways to see if he notices my daisy crown. "Why, little Ruth," he exclaims, breathless from running. "Oh, you're surely a princess." I feel the deep blush creeping into my cheeks. "She's Sneewittchen, Snow White," says the older girl. "Skin as white as snow, cheeks as red as roses, and hair as black as ebony. You are just like Sneewittchen, Ruth. Mama sent me out to tell you to come in for tea." He beams at me. "Do you like Pflaumenkuchen, Ruth?" Honey makes the best Pflaumenkuchen, plum tart made with yeast pastry, you've ever tasted. And there's a big bowl of whipped cream to go with it, too. I follow them into the house. I don't know if I like Pflaumenkuchen. I don't think I've ever had it before. But I'm quite certain that I will like it very much indeed.